Now, you've read the title, you saw the thumbnail, and you probably thought, Tara, obviously a video game world economy is going to be whack, especially compared to our real world economy, which to be fair is already whack, so what sense could this video possibly make? Well, the answer is, why not? And Final Fantasy XIV, Japan, and a few other things, so let's just get into it, and as a bonus challenge, count how many times I say Final Fantasy, starting with Final Fantasy XIV. And you're probably thinking, what does that have to do with the entire series? Or Final Fantasy VII. Let me explain. Like many other MMOs, you can illegally, or sometimes perfectly legally, buy and sell in-game currency for real-life money. Now, using a website, which I do not endorse at all, Player Options, we can see that 90 million gil is equivalent to about $65.23. Now, at the start of Final Fantasy VII, Barrett gives Cloud, or pays Cloud, 1,500 gil in exchange for helping him and his organization Avalanche blow up a reactor. Now, 1,500 gil is 0.001 of 90 million, and 0.001 of $65.23 is 0.006. So, we can infer that Cloud became an eco-terrorist for less than a penny. Right? Wrong. Because you have to consider that Final Fantasy VII gil and Final Fantasy XIV gil is not 1-to-1. Take the price of a high potion, for example. In Final Fantasy VII, a high potion costs 300 gil, and in Final Fantasy XIV, a high potion costs 146 gil. But then an ether in Final Fantasy VII costs 1,500 gil, and an ether in Final Fantasy XIV costs 50 gil. In Final Fantasy XVI, a high potion costs 400 gil, in the first Final Fantasy, a high potion costs 150 gil, and in Final Fantasy IV, it's 100 gil, so on and so forth. So gil is barely even 1-to-1 across the entire series. Now, this could obviously just be a classical case of supply and demand overall. For example, back to the ethers I was talking about, in 14 with so many more mages running around, an ether should cost way more. So they could just have an overabundance of ethers, but then why is nobody buying them? Just more questions than answers. So let's just backtrack a bit and completely ignore Final Fantasy XIV's gil prices and treat gil closer to a real world currency. Now, you have two options of going about this according to most of the internet, and this first one is according to me. One, you compare the cost of a Final Fantasy item to the same item in the real world, and the easiest thing we can do this with is the hand grenade from Final Fantasy VII. Now, I don't want to be put on a list, so I'm going off of a Quora post, but the average grenade back in 2021 cost $45 to the military, which in today's money is $53, or to be more specific, $52.99, meaning 1.5 Final Fantasy VII gil is $1 United States, which would then give Cloud a solid $1,000 to play with. This also means that everything in Final Fantasy is severely price gouged, and if you did some more math, which I kinda don't want to do for each game, well, just imagine that in the Final Fantasy VIII universe, you get a big scrape, and now you have to spend almost $70 for a nice band-aid. That would suck. 2, you equate 100 gil to 1 USD. This still means that some items have a very gross oversupply with very little demand. For example, one of Vincent's weapons, just named the shotgun, which is based off of the real world Spaz 12, costs $31. Now, it's kind of hard to find an exact price of the Spaz 12, but from what I see, it has the price range of 1,200 to 4,000 USD. So let's just average it out and say about $2,600. This means that shotguns are super common in the Final Fantasy VII world, or nobody wants them. And this also means that some items are price gouged to hell and back. This also means Cloud got a solid $15 for blowing up a reactor. However, item shop prices for normal items seem to be normal enough. For example, it costs $3 for a high potion and $5 for a tent, which is a reasonable price for a survival tent. Look it up. 3, you equate gil to be 1-to-1 to yen, which again makes things super weird. That same grenade from earlier now costs 8,331 gil. Cloud would have received $9.72, which isn't even enough for a Crunchwrap Supreme combo from Taco Bell, and that same shotgun is now just $20. However, for most shop items in the game, prices are still not that bad, just kinda low. So for a high potion, it's now $1.94, and for a survival tent, it's $3.24. So overall, not bad, but not great either. But if you were to go back in time to 1997 when Final Fantasy VII was released, prices would have actually made way more sense, as USD and yen were closer than they are today. However, if you go on Google and look up USD to yen, prices that year were going crazy, and you would have to consider the fact that 7 is mostly using Final Fantasy VI's prices, and you have to consider the total development time for both games and the producing time and all that jazz, so do what you will with that information. So taking all of this into consideration, you have a few paths to take here. Do you want everything in Final Fantasy to be grossly hyperinflated, grossly underinflated, have relatively normal prices, or have some prices be normal and some be utterly insane? Well, overall, I'd say that it's a fantasy game series and no game can come to one final conclusion. The economy of the video game is out of control when you introduce any real world concepts. For example, in Persona 5, you can buy a kukri for about $23. In real life, that's about the same price as a training kukri, but a normal kukri costs anywhere from $33 to $500. So while it isn't far off, there's still a decent price difference there. And let's not even get started on Pokemon. Anyways, thank you all for watching this relatively shorter video. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and go check out my blog posts. The link is in the description and in many other places. Peace out.